I sometimes will suddenly start feeling this anxiety feeling or a negative emotion pop up. It'll just like kind of show up all of a sudden, and it doesn't really feel like anything had happened, and I'm kind of confused about why am I suddenly feeling anxious. But what I'll do in that situation is I will go back, think of things that had happened maybe 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, a day ago, that could have sparked this little anxiety, negative emotion to have come in. And what I often realize is that it's like a little thought that I didn't really even catch consciously, but subconsciously I got insecurity from someone commenting something on one of my posts, or a friend saying a little comment that triggered me, or something didn't go the way that I had wanted it to. And subconsciously, I had collected this, which then built up in my mind, but consciously, I wasn't aware of it. But by stopping myself and asking myself, what could have affected my energy just right now? Why is it that I'm starting to feel this negativity bubbling up inside of me? I can then become aware of it. By becoming aware of it, I can then take care of it.
Hi, my name is Pernilla, and this is my Challenge Your Norm podcast. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything related to personal development. And well, to grow, we got to challenge our norm. And so on this podcast, we chat about life and how we can challenge our normal way of living it to make it greater than we could have ever imagined. Just one little belief, habit, bold move, and perspective at a time.
Hello, my beautiful friend, and welcome back to another episode here on my Challenge Your Norm podcast, where today I want to chat with you about how we can not allow negativity to enter our system, because I used to not be aware of these different tools that I now today use on a daily basis to keep myself positive and happy throughout my day, regardless of what insecurities pop up or fears pop up within, or what external circumstances could come in and make me feel negative within. And I am someone who has happiness as a core value, and I want to feel as good as possible throughout every single day. And the more things and tools that I learn and put into place and start practicing on a daily basis, the better I really have, the better I feel. And that's why I thought of these different things that I have been incorporating into my daily life and wanting to share them with you today. I was in a conversation the other day with a girl who was going through a really challenging time when it comes to getting her US visa, which I know how incredibly challenging that is. It actually was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life, because there's just so many things that need to work, and a lot of money is involved. Lawyers are involved. The US government are not easy to make happy when it comes to proving that we are worthy of getting this work visa here in the States. And I know how challenging it is. But when I was having this conversation with her, it was very obvious and clear to see that she enjoyed spending time in all of these things that aren't working out, and the negative aspects of this process, where I think that if we change that around and focus on, okay, this is not working, what can I then do instead to make this work and to make this turn out in the way that I want to? And rather than dwelling in the past or worrying about the future, which is something that we all do, myself included, how can I, in the current, present, now, focus on what can I do here now to both change my perspective, to make this a positive thing, to make me get motivated by this thing that maybe seems a little bit challenging right now, to move me forward, to take these action steps that can help me get the result that I want, but also just so that I can feel better in the midst of this thing that just feels so challenging. And I noticed with her is, regardless of how much I try to make her see that perspective in obviously a nice and respectful way, it wasn't something that she was willing to do. And I know what that feels like as well. If I'm stubborn in my way of thinking about a certain area or a certain situation in my life, it takes for me to be willing to see it from a different light, to make that change. So that's just a great reminder for us all that regardless of how much we want to change someone else's perspective, it is not our duty, it is not our place to do that. We will never be able to change someone else's negativity, but what we can do is when we are in a situation like that, for example, me being in a conversation with a person that maybe prioritize seeing the negative sides of a certain situation is I can distance myself. I can distance myself from allowing it to affect my energy. And that is one of the things that I want to talk with you about today. I just wanted to share why it is that I had the idea to make this podcast episode, because I think that in life, we are constantly, daily bombarded with so many things that could affect our energy and make us feel negative. And it is our responsibility to take charge of our own emotions so that we can stay in a positive state and continuously feel good throughout these challenges and obstacles that are coming our way. And it's always obviously easier to look back and see what lessons we learned from a negative situation or obstacle that we had to go through. But being in the midst of it and seeing it in a positive light can be really challenging. But these tools, I hope, will help us all. Remind myself, maybe remind you, or maybe even teach you something new whenever you are in the midst of something challenging. I actually want to start off, I think, with sharing how yesterday I was feeling a little bit low. I think I had spent all weekend working really hard on a project. And once the project was complete, I think I just felt drained. And the drained energy made me feel, I guess, insecure, which made me feel really low. And when I am really low and second guessing myself and, my whole life situation is 5 different things that instantly will help me feel better. So let's just start with those. What I did yesterday is I went on a hike. I've talked about that before. Literally just 1 hour walk in nature, both because you get the movement. So that's my second one, movement. Any form of movement will always help us reconnect back to ourselves, as well as spending time in nature. It does something magical to your soul. At least it does for me, and I think for a lot of other people. A third tool is just meditate. You can go on YouTube and find any little meditation to do. Just focus on your breathing. Maybe just turn on a meditation album and just focus on your breath. That can lead you back to connecting to yourself and into a more positive state, and not allow this negativity that you're feeling within stay there. Sometimes it also helps to journal it out, write out what is it actually that I'm going through right now that is affecting me, and maybe even ask yourself what actually is going on within, because oftentimes I think our minds will make up these negative situations even worse in our minds, but when we put it onto paper, we'll see that it may actually not be that bad, and we can also come up with solutions as to how can we solve this thing that may be feeling really negatively within right now. And the 5th thing that I just want to share is spending time with people who usually bring you light. I just feel like for me, it releases these negative emotions that I may be feeling if I'm with a loved one that brings me joy. And I'm sharing these 5 tools not because I think we should ever escape negative emotions, but there's a time and place to dig into our traumas and really do some deep healing work, which I think is crazy important for us to actually develop and grow on our journey. But this is more so for those times where maybe it's just because we haven't eaten right, or we haven't been loving on ourselves the way that we should, or we haven't been moving our body, we haven't been eating maybe nutritious foods that can also be affecting our mood and energy. So those were just 5 quick little tools that I personally use on a weekly basis whenever I feel like I'm not in as great of a place as I want to be. Moving on to something that I in the past and still will allow to slowly creep in and affect my energy is worrying. And that can be worrying about a ton of different things, but to use an example, it could be finances. And I don't consciously ever worry about finances, or at least that happens really rarely, but I subconsciously, due to maybe how we grew up, always trying to save money in my family, I will worry about finances, and it will stay in my subconscious mind, and I won't actually realize it till I will be journaling on it and asking myself different questions that I will understand, oh wow, the thing that in the back of my mind is keeping me at a lower frequency is actually the fact that I'm low-key worried about finances right now. And when I then journal on it and become aware of it, I realize, oh wow, okay, let's say worst case happened, then I become broke, I flat even at $0, I can always go get a job at Starbucks, and then I would figure it out from there. I've worked in ice cream shops, I've worked as a babysitter, I've been a dance teacher, I've done so many different jobs in the past, bakery, whatever job that I had in the past, I always chose to find light and positivity within whatever it is that I was doing at the time. So yeah, worst case comes to worst with this whole content creator dream that I have. If the absolute worst thing happened, then I would just go get a normal job as I would figure out this next stage of my life. And I don't think that's going to happen, but just making that really clear with myself, what if worst case scenario happens, finding a solution for that makes me able to not be worried about finances anymore, because I've figured out what to do if this worry that I have actually happens. And I know that a lot of us will have this worrying mindset. So I'm hoping that you listening to me talk about this, maybe you are aware, you can become, or you are already aware of something that you have been worrying about, or that sometimes you feel this worry creeps in your mind, and actually ask yourself, okay, if that worry were to actually happen, what would you do? And I think just you becoming very clear on what you would do if this secret worry were to actually come into reality, I just feel like it brings us this level of safety in knowing that, okay, even if the worst case scenario happens, I will still be fine. Of course, there can be way worse worries than financial worries. I just think that's something that a lot of us can maybe relate to. So that's why I gave that as an example. But regardless of what worries that may be more challenging than finances, really ask yourself, if that really were to happen, what would you do? And I just think it'll give you a deeper sense of clarity and peace, and allow you to not let that worry affect your day-to-day life, whether that being conscious or subconscious. And just having the awareness of the fact that you do worry, for me at least, it's like, oh, then I can catch myself whenever I realize, oh wow, I was just worrying right now. And then I can, go through that process again. Okay, well, if that were to happen, then I would do this and this and this. And then that just brings me back at ease into a good place, because then I realize, okay, even if that thing I was just worried about were to happen, I would know how to work my way through it. And I also would know that by working myself through that really challenging process, I would become so much stronger and learn so many lessons, because every time I've gone through something challenging in the past, I have become a more wise and stronger human by going through that. So yeah, hopefully that will help. But I also think something that's for a lot of other people, something that I don't personally resonate with as much, but I know a lot of my friends do, is instead of worrying about the future, it's dwelling in the past. A lot of people will, think of past mistakes they've made, or things that they had done in the past or hadn't done that they wish they had done. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, that's what will be going on in the back of their mind, which then will not allow them to live in as happy of a state as they could if they were to release that negative dwelling of the past. And I think with whether you're worrying about the future or dwelling in the past, first step is always becoming aware that we're doing that, because often it happens in our subconscious mind. And if you are to dwell in the past, ask yourself, well, this happened. There's nothing I can do about the past, but I can do something with where I'm at now. So let's say in the past you wish you had taken a life coach course, and now you feel like you're too old because you're in your 40s and it's just too late. Well, you still can do that. And it's this thing, instead of dwelling in the past, ask yourself, well, is this something I'm willing to do something about now, or am I not? And if you are, go do it. And if you're not, then let it go, release that. But I quickly want to share, my mom, when she was in her 40s, decided to take a psychotherapist, couples therapist, sex therapist, and all these other degrees, because she had been a hairdresser for 15 years and she felt this calling to go about a different journey with her life. And so she decided to do that really late in life. And I just think she's just such a great example of how it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always decide and choose to make that change. And yes, maybe you're going to have to be living a little bit broke for a while, but are you willing to do that, or are you not? Like, really be asking yourself these questions so that we can let go of that dwelling in the past of things that we didn't do or we didn't do well enough. It's like, what can I do today to change that, or release that, or move in the direction that I maybe have always wanted? If we look at the most highly successful people, like, they've failed so many times in the past, but that didn't stop them from continuously strive towards this thing that they want in life. And so many people have become so successful later in life, and they didn't allow their age to stop them. And Neither should you. It doesn't matter if you didn't start 10 years ago, because you can start today. And I just think it's so important that we ask ourselves these questions and are really honest and authentic with ourselves, because I do think that it will haunt us for the rest of our life if we don't do something about it. And maybe it will haunt us for the rest of our life until we find clarity in the fact that, yes, let's say I wanted a six-pack when I was 20 and I never got it. Now I'm 30. Am I willing to eat the nutrition and do that type of training to get the six-pack? And if you're not, then stop beating yourself up about the fact that you don't have a six-pack when that's not really even in alignment with how you want to be living your life. I think these negative worries and dwelling of the past and even how we're not good enough in the now just hold us back from not living this really joyful, happy, accepting life that we want to deep down be living. And just the clarity of asking ourselves these challenging questions will free us. And the freedom of all these negative thoughts is what will help us stay in this beautiful, positive state, or at least easier. And it'll help us catch whenever we are going back into dwelling in the past, worrying about the future, or being harder on ourselves in the current state, in the now. I want to share two different things that can affect my negative energy and how I will get out of it. One is that I sometimes will suddenly start feeling this anxiety feeling or a negative emotion pop up. It'll just kind of show up all of a sudden, and it doesn't really feel like anything had happened, and I'm kind of confused about why am I suddenly feeling anxious. But what I'll do in that situation is I will go back, think of things that had happened maybe 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, a day ago, that could have sparked this little anxiety, negative emotion to have come in. And what I often realize is that it's like a little thought that I didn't really even catch consciously, but subconsciously I got insecurity from someone commenting something on one of my posts, or a friend saying a little comment that triggered me, or something didn't go the way that I had wanted it to. And subconsciously I had collected this, which then built up in my mind, but consciously I wasn't aware of it. But by stopping myself and asking myself, what could have affected my energy just right now? Why is it that I'm starting to feel this negativity bubbling up inside of me? I can then become aware of it. By becoming aware of it, I can then take care of it. I can ask myself, is this really worthy of me to feel negatively about? And maybe it is. And if it is, then okay, what can I do to solve or heal this emotion? And sometimes that just means giving myself some self-love and saying some really beautiful, kind things to myself. Sometimes it means reaching out to that friend and just figuring out this situation, what just happened, and getting clarity within that. And sometimes it can just be that, okay, I just, I need to move on from this because it isn't serving me. It can mean all these different things, but by becoming aware of what was it that sparked this little negative emotion inside of me, I can then do something about it. And it's the same when we catch our negativity of worrying about the future or dwelling in the past or all these other things that we've talked about. It's like the awareness of it. And that leads us to the final thing that I want to talk with you about today, because I think that the more we become aware of these things that are triggering to us or not affecting us in a positive way, we can also start preparing ourselves before we are about to, let's say, go into a social interaction with people that we know maybe will trigger us, or we're about to post something on social media and we know that sometimes certain things can affect us. Like, how am I going to handle this situation when it happens, so that we prepare ourselves, so that when the situation may arise, we've prepared ourselves in a way so that we know what to do, so that we don't allow it to affect our negative energy. So let's say you are about to go home for a holiday with your family, and you know that you are right now really working on yourself, and you have stopped drinking and it's really affecting your life in a positive way, and you have decided that you're not going to eat sugar because that also is affecting you in a positive way, and it's just helping you reach these goals that you've been wanting to reach for a very long time. And so you're about to go home, and you know that this one specific family member is going to be like, oh, just have a drink, like, don't be so boring. Or an uncle is gonna say, when, like, whatever your uncle can say. Some family member, usually will make you feel bad or trigger you in a way that just doesn't feel good. It could also be anything passive aggressive. That's usually a lot of the time how it happens. It's like someone saying a comment that isn't necessarily negative, but the energy around it is pretty negative and it affects you. And by preparing yourself, knowing that, okay, when my family member says this and that, I'm going to take a deep breath and know that that comment has nothing to do with me, but more so about the fact that they are not willing to change. Because oftentimes I think when we change or we're trying to better ourselves, people who are not in that mindset and don't want to change, they are possibly maybe threatened by our growth, and they want to make sure that you stay low where they're at so that they don't feel badly about themselves. So if you can remind yourself of the fact that, oh, actually this family member has always wanted secretly to get in shape, and now seeing me do that is making them feel negatively within, and that's why they're trying to maybe make me go back to how I used to live my life as well. By having prepared yourself and understanding, having this level of understanding for them and why it is that they may be saying these things to you, you will be prepared so that when you're in that situation, you can keep your energy high and maybe even be supportive to that other person. You don't have to, but as long as you can keep your energy in a loving place because you prepared yourself, it does not matter what they end up telling you or saying to you. You will be able to breathe and keep this good energy going. You won't allow it to enter your system. You won't allow the negativity to go in and affect this good thing that you have got going for you. And this can, happen in many different ways. It can also be in social environments with your friends, that you're the only person that stopped drinking and they're questioning that. I'm sharing these examples because that's, the kind of examples that I can personally relate to, but you can of course switch it out with anything that feels right to you. But like them not understanding why you're so boring and you want to go to bed early and you don't want to drink anymore. It's like you knowing why it is that you're doing this, and that's what makes you feel good. And I think the more you can accept yourself for doing this, the more you can prepare yourself whenever you are in those situations, and really stand with a strong no instead of maybe. The more they also will stop bothering you about it, because the more strong you are in your opinion about it, like they'll know that there's no way that they can say things like that to you anymore and it affecting you. But if they can sense that there's like little wiggle room, then I think there's a more likelihood that they will continue to make those comments. Where if you're just like really strong in your standpoint, I think a different level of either acceptance or just like not saying things like that to you anymore will occur. But even if it does, if you prepare yourself before going into a situation like that, I do believe that when the situation occurs, you will be able to, and you will get better and better at it the more you practice, or at least that's been my experience. The more I practice in preparing myself before going into a situation like that, I have been able to not even slightest bit let it affect my energy. And then sometimes it does. Maybe I forgot to prepare myself because I start feeling like, oh, now I know how to handle it. But then I still will forget to prepare myself and like really center my energy before going into a situation like that. And then I'll feel myself, oh, wow, today it really affected me. That just is a great learning lesson. The next time I go into this situation, I need to remember to prepare myself and have this inner strength and connect with myself before I go into it. I mean, life is just one big learning lesson, right? But as we challenge our norm and do these things that we know long term is gonna benefit us and help us stay in this happy, peaceful, good state, the better we get at it and the more beautiful life becomes. And I'm just so grateful that you're here wanting to hang out with me on this podcast and work on these things with me, because I just feel like life gets so freaking good when we continuously strive to be better and grow and keep our happiness and negativity out of our life. I do think some negativity obviously is important, because otherwise we would never grow, right? But if we can learn to overcome them quicker and in a more positive way, then I think that's a good thing. If you found this useful and maybe you think that someone could find it useful as well, please share it with a friend. And if you have a question, I really would love for you to make a voice note and we can play it on the podcast and I can answer some questions. I think that would be super fun because I always try to come up with, different subjects that I think are useful to you because they've been useful for me, but maybe you've been walking around with some question in your life or some challenge that maybe I could give my perspective on, and then I would just absolutely love for you to reach out to me on Instagram and send me a little voice note and we can play it on the podcast. And if you wanted to be anonymous, we can absolutely do that as well. I just want this podcast to be for you and for us all to grow together. So if you have anything, please let me know. And you have no idea how much it helps when you review my podcast. So if you would be willing to do that and give me some stars, I would just be so grateful for that. My challenge for you today is just to really catch whenever you feel any sort of negativity, anxiety, worry, dwelling, insecurity pop up, to catch it and take care of it. Ask yourself these questions that I spoke about in today's podcast episode. Catch it and heal them. Work on them so that you can learn to quicker and quicker let go of them so that you can live in more of a positive state, because it just feels good to feel happy, doesn't it? I think that's what we are all striving for, and so if we can practice that, I just think that's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, as always, in order for you to grow, you have to challenge your norm. Bye.